Honestly, when private jet logs detailing non-official flights linked to Queen Camilla were leaked to senior aides, the atmosphere within the executive offices shifted immediately. These logs did not just record dates and destinations, they documented specific financial allocations, non-standard maintenance billing, and private charters routed through third-party management firms over a period of 18 months. So here where it gets interesting. King Charles was briefed on these documents directly by his senior private secretary during a scheduled morning review of household expenditures, well before any public media outlet caught wind of the situation. The confrontation that followed was not an emotional argument or a theatrical shouting match. It was a calculated, formal discussion held inside the king's private study at Clarence House. Charles sat across from Camilla with the audited flight records laid out line by line. The core issue wasn't simply the usage of private aviation, it was the mechanism by which the funding was processed. Portions of the operational costs had been billed under official royal travel budgets rather than private privy purse accounts, creating a potential compliance and tax nightmare for the monarchy's administrative team. Camilla's initial response during the meeting was grounded in administrative defense. She pointed out that several of the flights in question were arranged by her personal office to facilitate rapid travel between scheduled private engagements and public duties, often on tight turnarounds where commercial or standard security-cleared options were deemed logistically non-viable by her security detail. However, the documentation showed that several trips involved personal guests and non-state destinations, which legally required separate accounting under the sovereign grant guidelines. As the discussion progressed, the financial controllers for the royal household were called into the room to clarify the auditing trail. It became evident that an internal protocol had been breached. The king was forced to address not just the optics of the leaked logs, but the legal and financial exposure it created for the crown estate and the privy purse. The tension in the room was defined by precision and protocol rather than emotional outbursts. Charles made it clear that every single line item would have to be reconciled, and a formal binding document would need to be signed to prevent further regulatory scrutiny. Make sure to subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss any of these deep dive breakdowns as we unpack every detail of this developing situation. Behind the scenes, news of the leaked logs and the ongoing meeting spread rapidly through the higher echelons of the royal staff. The communications team immediately went into containment mode, monitoring incoming inquiries from parliamentary oversight committees and major news outlets. The primary goal was to determine how the flight logs were extracted from the internal flight operations system and whether the leak originated from within the RAF VIP Transport Liaison Unit, or private charter broker. Prince William was informed of the discovery shortly after the morning briefing concluded. His reaction was focused entirely on risk management and public accountability. William's team at Kensington Palace has maintained a strict stance on financial transparency, knowing that public scrutiny regarding royal spending is at an all-time high. William requested a direct briefing from the treasurer to the king to ascertain whether any public funds from the sovereign grant were directly impacted, recognizing that any misallocation could severely damage the credibility of the institution. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was also made aware of the developments as senior advisors evaluated the potential fallout on upcoming household schedules. The focus within Kensington Palace was on isolating their own operational budgets and ensuring that all family travel logs remained fully audited and compliant. The reaction across the family was unified in one aspect: absolute compliance with financial oversight was non-negotiable, and the situation needed to be resolved in writing immediately. Back inside Clarence House, King Charles presented Camilla with a formal administrative instrument, a legally binding operational covenant. This document was drafted by senior royal legal advisors to redefine the boundaries of private travel funding, establish strict independent auditing for all future charter requests, and require personal financial reimbursement for any past flights that failed to meet state purpose criteria. Signing the document was a significant step. It effectively placed the Queen's personal travel logistics under direct external audit oversight, stripping away the discretionary clearance that her office had previously used. The signing took place in silence, witnessed by the King's private secretary and the keeper of the privy purse. The document ensured that all outstanding balances were settled quietly from private funds, neutralizing the risk of a formal parliamentary audit into the sovereign grant. The details of the document extended beyond travel logistics. It instituted a comprehensive review of all personal staff allowances, private security detailing for non-official travel, and the use of royal assets for private foundation work. By signing, Camilla agreed to full transparency protocols, effectively closing the loop on the administrative loophole that allowed the private jet logs to accumulate unverified expenses over the previous year and a half. The leak itself triggered a sweep of internal security within the logistics department. Forensic specialists were brought in to trace the digital footprint of the accessed flight manifests. The investigation aimed to determine if the breach was an intentional internal leak designed to force financial reform, or an external cybersecurity incident targeting the private charter companies utilized by the household. Within the broader royal family, the resolution of the incident brought a cautious quiet, but the operational changes were immediate. Travel requests now require dual authorization from both the Treasury and the King's primary private secretary. The swift signing of the legal covenant prevented a full-scale public scandal, but it highlighted the rigorous internal checks currently governing the modern monarchy. As the internal audit concludes, the financial team is finalizing the official reporting figures to ensure complete alignment before the annual financial disclosures are published. The entire episode demonstrates the zero-tolerance policy currently being enforced regarding financial governance within the royal household. Moving into the second phase of this internal review, the focus shifted from the immediate signing of the covenant to the forensic accounting of the flight records themselves. The flight logs span dozens of routes across European airspace, connecting RAF Northolt and Farnborough Airport with private airfields near personal residences in France, Scotland, and the south of England. The core dispute was not whether these trips occurred, but how they were categorized within the dual accounting system of the royal household. Under the established framework of royal finance, transportation is divided into three distinct operational buckets: state visits, official engagements, and private travel. State visits are fully funded by the government via Foreign Office appropriations. Official engagements fall under the sovereign grant, which is subject to public audit and parliamentary scrutiny. Private travel must be funded strictly through the Duchy of Lancaster or personal accounts. The leaked logs revealed a systemic blending of these categories, where private journeys were appended to official trips as technical repositioning legs. When private jet operations execute positioning flights, moving an empty aircraft to a location to prepare for a future state engagement, the costs are typically covered under the official operational budget. However, the internal audit discovered that several of these positioning legs were modified mid-flight to accommodate non-official passengers and personal stops. The legal advisors pointed out that while this practice had occasionally been overlooked in past decades under looser administrative oversight, modern compliance standards make it an explicit violation of public funding guidelines. King Charles was particularly concerned about the regulatory implications involving the National Audit Office. Should public sector auditors flag these flight anomalies during their annual review of the sovereign grant, the Treasury would be legally required to issue a formal inquiry to Parliament. Such an inquiry would force a public disclosure of every individual manifest, passenger manifest, and fuel surcharge associated with the Queen's personal office over the preceding 18 months. The atmosphere at Buckingham Palace turned severe as the legal counsel outlined the exact provisions of the document Charles had just presented for signature. The covenant was structured as a formal deed of indemnity and operational framework. Clause 1 required the immediate personal reimbursement of all contested aviation costs directly to the Privy Purse. Clause 2 revoked the independent chartering authority of the Queen's private office, placing all future aviation requests under the direct command of the Master of the Household and the Keeper of the Privy Purse. Clause 3 introduced an unprecedented level of external oversight. An independent third-party compliance team, drawn from a major international auditing firm, was granted real-time access to all royal transport manifests, flight plans, and fuel invoices. This meant that no private aircraft could be chartered or dispatched for any member of the royal family without prior written financial clearance verifying the funding source. Camilla's legal and administrative advisors raised concerns during the meeting regarding the operational rigidity this covenant would impose. They argued that high-level security protocols and unpredictable scheduling frequently require last-minute adjustments that do not fit neatly into rigid corporate expense models. The Metropolitan Police Royalty and Specialist Protection Command had often recommended non-scheduled private charters over fixed commercial routes due to elevated threat assessments surrounding certain European destinations. However, the king maintained that security necessity could no longer serve as a blanket justification for accounting irregularities. Charles emphasized that public confidence in the financial management of the crown estate was paramount, especially during an era of broader economic restraint across the country. The document was designed to eliminate any ambiguity, ensuring that security-driven travel changes were audited just as rigorously as routine journeys. The reaction from Prince William during this period was pivotal. William, operating out of Kensington Palace, took a firm stance during internal consultations with the king's private secretary. The Prince of Wales emphasized that the future of the monarchy depends heavily on absolute transparency and fiscal discipline. William's advisors made it clear that the prince would not sanction any official crossover between his own operational budgets and any unresolved liabilities stemming from the Queen's travel logs. Catherine, Princess of Wales, supported this structured approach, focusing on maintaining the integrity of their own household's administrative practices. The Kensington Palace team ensured that all travel for their engagements remained strictly separated and fully documented, creating a clear operational boundary between the households. This reaction underscored a broader generational shift within the family towards strict corporate governance. Meanwhile, the internal investigation into the source of the leak continued to gather momentum. Digital forensics specialists analyzed the secure communications network connecting the Royal Flight Coordination Desk at RAF Northolt with the private aviation brokerage firm contracted by the household. It was determined that the leak was not the result of an external cyber attack, but rather an internal administrative breach where unredacted flight sheets were accessed and copied from a shared network drive. The discovery of an internal breach heightened concerns regarding wider security protocols. If flight logs containing precise departure times, passenger lists, and tail numbers could be extracted without authorization, it represented both a financial risk and a critical physical security vulnerability. The king ordered an immediate overhaul of the digital access permissions governing the entire transport division, restricting high-level flight metadata strictly to cleared senior directors. The signed covenant was formally processed and logged into the royal archives later that afternoon under strict confidentiality protocols. By signing the agreement, Camilla accepted the full restructuring of her travel logistics and agreed to the financial restitution schedule laid out by the Treasury. The immediate capital outlay required to settle the outstanding balances was drawn directly from private funds, ensuring that no public money was utilized to resolve the discrepancy. Despite the administrative resolution, the operational changes within the household were felt immediately. Scheduled flights for the upcoming quarter were subjected to an exhaustive line-by-line review. Several planned journeys were canceled or converted to standard commercial routes or official rail transport to align strictly with the newly established cost allocation parameters. The administrative staff within the Queen's office underwent a complete briefing regarding the new compliance mechanisms. Staff members were instructed that any failure to properly log flight routes or categorize passenger manifests would result in immediate disciplinary action and potential removal from administrative duties. The era of informal scheduling and discretionary travel arrangements was officially brought to an end. As news of the signed covenant settled within the inner circle, attention turned to managing the potential long-term media exposure. Senior communications strategists established a direct line of contact with key press oversight bodies to monitor any potential publication of the leaked documents. Prepared to issue factual administrative statements detailing the structural reforms and financial reimbursements already completed. Expanding on the immediate aftershocks of the signed covenant, the third phase of this overhaul reached deep into the structural mechanics of the royal household's daily operations. With the flight logs fully reconciled and the reimbursement framework active, King Charles turned his focus toward an exhaustive operational audit of all auxiliary logistics. This was no longer just about aviation. The leak had exposed systemic gaps in how executive decisions were recorded across various private offices within the royal estate. Inside the administrative offices of Sandringham and Windsor, teams of independent auditors were granted unprecedented clearance to inspect transport allocation ledgers dating back 2 fiscal years. The goal was simple: Ensure no other private accounts held hidden subsidies or unallocated operational costs that could trigger future regulatory disclosures. Every vehicle dispatch, maritime movement, and specialized security detail came under direct financial review by the keeper of the privy purse. The atmosphere across all administrative branches was taut as senior advisors adjusted to this new reality of zero-tolerance corporate governance. In previous eras, minor operational variances were often managed quietly during end-of-year reconciliations. Under the new protocol mandated by the King's signed directive, every line item had to be declared, categorized, and cross-referenced in real time before any asset could be deployed. Within Kensington Palace, Prince William directed his administrative team to conduct a parallel review of their own household procedures to ensure complete alignment with the newly enforced standards. William made it clear that transparency was the sole defense against external criticism. By establishing a rigorous, firewalled accounting system for his own team, the prince ensured that the Prince and Princess of Wales' operational footprint remained entirely free from any spillover controversy. Catherine, Princess of Wales, continued to emphasize stability and protocol within their immediate staff operations. The focus was on maintaining clear boundaries between personal family logistics and public royal duties. This proactive stance effectively insulated their office from the fallout, demonstrating to institutional observers that the next generation of leadership was fully committed to strict fiscal accountability. Meanwhile, the internal security investigation into the origin of the leak reached a critical junction. The cyberforensics team narrowed the point of extraction down to a specific secure terminal within the flight scheduling node. The individual responsible for accessing the unredacted travel manifests had utilized elevated administrative credentials to bypass normal audit logging. This discovery shifted the investigation from a potential technical breach to a targeted insider matter within the administrative staff. Human resources and legal officers were brought in to conduct formal interviews with the personnel who held clearance for those specific network drives. The primary objective was to determine whether the documents were exfiltrated for commercial gain, personal motivation, or as a deliberate political effort to force institutional reform. The internal security protocols were immediately elevated, revoking administrative override capabilities across the entire digital infrastructure. Back at Clarence House, the implementation of the new travel covenant was already altering daily routines. Queen Camilla's private office had to submit detailed travel requests weeks in advance, complete with precise itinerary justifications, passenger lists, and third-party vendor quotes. The discretionary power that had previously allowed rapid, last-minute travel adjustments without pre-audit approval was entirely eliminated. The financial officers assigned to monitor the covenant confirmed that the initial reimbursement transfer from private funds into the Privy Purse account was executed successfully. This transaction effectively cleared the outstanding liability for the disputed flight legs, providing the Treasury with concrete proof of compliance should parliamentary committees raise formal inquiries during upcoming budgetary hearings. Despite the financial settlement, the institutional shift sent shockwaves through the broader network of royal organizations and charities. Patronages and affiliated trusts that had occasionally benefited from shared logistics or coordinated travel arrangements were formally notified that all future assistance would be governed by strict arm's-length commercial terms. No public or state-funded asset could be utilized for charitable logistics without explicit cost recovery mechanisms in place. Senior communications officers continued their vigilance, tracking global media outlets and monitoring private intelligence feeds to gauge whether additional leaked documents existed outside the household. The primary strategy remained unchanged: address any prospective reporting with verified facts, documented financial reimbursements, and concrete proof of structural reform. As the restructuring took hold, King Charles maintained a steady, firm posture during all executive meetings. The swift resolution of the crisis reinforced a clear mandate throughout the Crown estate. Modern royal operations would be defined by absolute transparency, rigorous administrative discipline, and unwavering compliance with public standards. Moving into the fourth stage of this systematic overhaul, the structural modifications expanded beyond immediate aviation logistics and began reshaping the broader legal framework governing the Queen's private office. With the financial reimbursement fully processed by the keeper of the Privy Purse, Legal teams from both the Crown Estate and private practice were tasked with codifying these operational boundaries into permanent institutional policy. This codification meant that every future contract, operational charter, and service-level agreement involving senior members of the royal family had to include explicit auditing covenants. The legal advisors drafted standardized provisions mandating that any charter company, private aviation broker, or security contractor operating on behalf of the household grant full access to their internal billing ledgers upon request. This effectively closed the third-party proxy gap that had previously allowed unverified auxiliary charges to accumulate outside direct household view. Inside Clarence House, the administrative structure of the Queen's personal staff underwent a direct reorganization. The position of Principal Travel Coordinator was restructured, shifting primary reporting lines away from individual private secretaries and placing them directly under the joint supervision of the Master of the Household and the Treasury. This ensured that no single office could unilaterally authorize flight repositioning, itinerary modifications, or non-official passenger manifest changes without dual executive sign-off. Meanwhile, the internal security audit regarding the data leak reached its final administrative conclusion. The forensic analysis confirmed that the breach was contained to the single terminal access point previously identified. Formal security clearings across all logistics departments were immediately reevaluated, and advanced digital signature protocols were implemented. Under the new IT architecture, viewing or exporting sensitive operational schedules requires dual-factor authentication tied to hardware security keys issued directly by the household's central security office. The security infrastructure across the royal household has also emerged completely overhauled. The forensic investigation into the leak led to a comprehensive upgrade of digital asset management, restricting high-level administrative data strictly to clear dual-authenticated terminals. The breach served as a critical catalyst, forcing an overdue modernization of internal privacy and physical operational security. Ultimately, King Charles' decisive management of the crisis transformed a severe administrative risk into a masterclass in modern corporate governance. By confronting the issue directly, enforcing immediate personal financial restitution, and signing binding regulatory covenants into policy, the king demonstrated an unyielding commitment to preserving the integrity, trust, and fiscal accountability of the modern crown.